A gun in the face.
Then all of a sudden, they all kind of lined up. They pointed their guns at me. And this is the point where I thought, I'm going to die today.
Started 2 years of horror for an American in Venezuela.
They said, you need to give us your phone and get ready because you're coming with us.
I'm Becky Bruce, and I spent a year researching and piecing together Josh and Tammy Holt's story about their ordeal in a notorious prison.
That's when everything started to turn bad. We had another pound on the door. Boom, boom, boom. And there was the police once again.
You can binge all of the episodes of Hope in Darkness on kslpodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction and recovery, brought to you by Pinnacle Recovery Center. It's where I started my road to recovery. Now, in the earlier episode, we talked to broadcast legend Randall Carlisle. We got the down and dirty. We got your story.
And I got sober in an hour. That was pretty good.
It's a sobering podcast.
Yes, it is.
So, Randall, let's talk about what you've been doing for the past 7 years. Now, I started the first podcast with me seeing you working the checkout center at the Harmon's downtown. Were you sober then?
Oh, sure. That was after I went through my second treatment facility, and I've been sober for 7 years. And after I got out of that, I was determined to stay sober. So I did a bunch of things. I went to 90 AA meetings in 90 days, which some people recommend you do. I also made doubly sure that I wouldn't get drunk. I took Antabuse for 8 months. And for people who don't know, it makes you sick as can be if you drink while you're taking it. Like Vivitrol. Vivitrol is a shot you get every 28 days or whatever, and it's a daily dosage of the drug that I was taking every day in pill form, and that helps relieve cravings and doesn't let you get high. And then that combined with Antabuse that would have made me sick as can be if I drank. I did that for about 8 months. And I went to meetings all the time, and I went back to aftercare at uni, and I just worked on staying sober. And what happened, in my mind, and people at AA meetings would tell me I was weak because I was taking those pills. What happened in my mind is all the years that I'd been drinking, I drank whenever there was either a success or a failure or somebody yelled at me or a fight. I would drink over anything. And what happened was I knew I couldn't drink. So I learned other ways to cope with that, with whatever good or bad happened on a given day, and it sort of went to the back of my mind that that's my release. And so then I stopped taking those pills, and I started looking for work. And this is going to sound, I tried anything but getting back into TV because I had sort of a bad taste in my mouth because they seemed like they had fired me unjustifiably. And I applied to be a shuttle bus driver out the airport, got turned down. Applied to be a crossing guard, got turned down. I applied at several, and I thought, my gosh, here I am.
I'm Randall Carlisle.
Yeah, right. How come I can't be a shuttle bus driver? Because I wanted something that wouldn't be as high pressure or anything. And I applied at a couple of grocery stores, thinking that'd be a way to go. And Harmon's called me back for an interview because you applied online. They called me in for an interview, and they hired me as a customer service manager. And I'm sure the only reason they did is because I was well-known from TV, and I didn't know crap about the grocery industry. But I learned really quickly, and I found that a very humbling and very rewarding job. And I'll always credit Harmon's with giving me that chance because I didn't know anything about groceries.
Well, I was doing a show on Channel 2 called Fresh Living, and we'd have Bob and Randy in all the time.
Yeah, right.
And news stations love it when Harmon's comes because they bring all this food. And I remember bringing Bob to the side and asked about Randall and asked about you. And he says, you know what? He is such a pleasure, and the customers love him. He shows up, he does his work, and he says, I couldn't be more proud of the job that Randall's doing for us.
And my only problem, ego-wise, I guess, was people would recognize me, and they'd say, I really loved you on TV. What are you doing and working in a grocery store? And that was a hard thing to, and I simply looked at them and said, because I want to. and nobody, but it made me think all the time, and it was like they looked down. It gave me a great respect for people who work in grocery stores because they work their rear ends off. It's a difficult job, and it was just a hard thing to explain how I felt doing that.
You don't have to explain it to me.
Yeah,
I did
right.
the same thing because I was delivering furniture, and I would go deliver furniture to people's houses, and I'd walk in, and they'd go, "Hey, aren't you?" And I'd go, "Yeah." And they go, "What are you doing this for?" And I'd always, I always was quick with the comeback. I would say, "It's a rebuilding year." And then if they'd ask, I would tell them about the DUI and the rehab and kind of go into it. But it was one of those things where, and then I know as soon as I got into the car and we were on to the next stop, they were picking up their phones going, "Hey, guess who just delivered our furniture?" Kind of like I did when I saw you at Harmon's when I went back to the news station. I said, "You know who I just saw?" And, but it was cool to see everybody in the 2 newsroom, and I told them about you, and they said, "Good for him. Great. I think that's amazing." And I think that's what it is that you've got to put your ego to the side and just get to work.
Do whatever.
Yeah.
And then the strange thing, and this made me sort of believe a little bit more of what I hear in AA meetings. I've heard people say, "I got sober and good things began to happen for me." And I thought, well, that's whatever. That's what
because last time
believe.
You got sober, you lost a job and a wife.
Right. And after I'd been working at Harmon's for a little while, I get a call from Channel 4, and they had been bought by another giant corporation, and they offered me a job back as a weekend anchor, weekday street reporter. So I worked 2 jobs for a while. I said, I can't leave Harmon's because they were really good to me. And I worked 2 jobs for a while, and then it was just too much. And Harmon's was gracious about the whole thing. But so then I go back into TV, and I worked for several years there doing weekends, and I'm covering all the stuff that's going down with Operation Rio Grande, and Odyssey House played a big role in expanding their bed space to take in people who were arrested in Operation Rio Grande. In Phase 2 was treatment. And so I got to know the people at Odyssey House, and they offered me this job of media and community relations, and I thought, wow, I've never done that, working for a nonprofit recovery center. And then I began to think about it, and I thought, wow, that probably is a good way to wind up my working life. So I've been there. I still had time left on my Channel 4 contract. They let me out. I've been working at Odyssey for a year and a half, and I love it. It's just it's very rewarding.
I'm very impressed with the people that are managing and running Odyssey House. I bet that was a big part of, your desire to work with them.
It was, and I'll tell you one thing: it's a lot easier to stay sober working with people in a recovery center than it is working in TV.
I bet.
But they do a good job, and my goal. They knew that I had good contacts in the media, and my goal is not so much to push Odyssey House as much as to push recovery, and do as many get news people to do as many positive stories as they can on the fact that this is a disease. It's not a bad moral choice. I mean, maybe initially it is, but it's a disease that people are fighting, and that recovery is possible. And the reason it's so rewarding to me is I wore 2 hats. I covered the people in news stories down on Rio Grande, and they'd spit at you, and they'd throw stuff at you and swear at you, and you'd see them just lying around in the street, and you think, God, these people there's no redemption possible here. And then I followed them through, going through our, completing our treatment program, entering into life with a job and a house or a place to live. And if you ran into them today, you wouldn't know that they were down on Rio Grande. And recovery is possible with anybody. It doesn't have to be somebody who goes to an expensive treatment center or goes to a nonprofit or whatever works. But recovery is possible, and that's the message I want to get out.
So what sort of maintenance are you doing for your recovery these days? You've talked a lot about AA, and I've said that when I went to AA, I wasn't a big fan of it. Right. The thing I did enjoy that I liked was that there was a room of 200 people who were similar to me, and I didn't feel alone. For the first time in my disease, I didn't feel alone. And that's what I really liked about it. But you seem to have a better understanding of AA, and you kind of incorporated it into your recovery?
I chair a meeting down on the block, which is the Rio Grande area. I chair a meeting on Monday evenings, and then I try to go to one other meeting a week, which is my home group. That's what the word we were looking for. And I prefer smaller meetings. The one up at Uni on Sunday mornings is probably the most popular AA meeting in the Valley. And you said there are a couple hundred people there.
Yeah.
And I prefer smaller meetings. And then every day, sort of working at Odyssey House, I'm sort of dealing in the recovery field, so it's been easy for me. And I probably don't go to as many AA meetings as I used to, but I'm still very aware. But every day and every morning I get up and I pray to whatever I believe in, thanking that thing, that
your higher power,
that higher power, for the fact that I woke up sober and that I went to bed. I do that every night too, and so I do a gratitude every day. I'm grateful that you invited me down to this podcast. I'm grateful that we could connect and talk about this issue, because every single person that probably is struggling can find help. And so every day I find something to be grateful for. I don't know.
You mentioned right when you got out of recovery the second time that you did 90 in 90 days, that 90 AA meetings. And we were talking off air. There was a lot of talk off air, but you said the thing that you liked about the 90 in 90 days was that every room has a different feel. Everyone has a different vibe. So if you went to one AA meeting and you didn't really particularly like that one, go check out some other ones, because you might find a place that you feel at home with, and you get that sense of community that will help you along in your recovery.
There's large meetings, there's small meetings. The meeting where I go to my home group, we have somebody else who works in radio. We have a couple of lawyers. We have a couple of homeless people. It's just a nice mix of people who regularly go there, and I think that I like that. I don't know why, but it helps me in my recovery. And there's some meetings I don't like, and especially at first, because you feel out of place when you walk into an AA meeting. Everybody knows the lingo and everybody knows what you do and everything, but you can learn that very quickly, and people are very happy to accept you into the fold because they know you're trying to stay sober just like they are. Some people place great value on AA, and others don't. What have you found?
I think that for such a long time, it was the only really well-known method of recovery. And so, thankfully, a lot of people have been helped through AA and similar 12-step programs. The trend nowadays, and the two of you can speak to this from your own experience, but is to provide people with an opportunity to make connection. And I think, Casey, you're talking about that even within AA. There are a lot of different types of meetings. Like Randall, you said you prefer the small meetings, and once you get to know the people there, you feel more of a sense of connection and community. Sure. So you ought to kind of flip around until you find a meeting that works for you. But there are lots of other treatment methods and modalities, and I think that's becoming the trend, is that we were losing a lot of people that would go to an AA meeting. And if I remember the statistics correctly, this is probably 10 years old, but about 50% of people that went to that first meeting didn't go back because they didn't make a connection either with the people or with the method. And that's a lot of people now feeling like I don't have another place to go. And so if you're not making a connection with that first meeting, I do recommend people go to several meetings and maybe find a community within 12 steps that works for them. If that doesn't work, then finding other methods that include cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness and meditation is showing a lot of promise in a person's life, helping them on a daily basis. And you can do that individually, with groups, with therapists. So I think that AA plays an important role in almost every community, but there are a lot of other options. And I guess my message to people is, if you've tried AA and it's not working for you, there are other things that we can do. And places like Odyssey House or other recovery centers are able to introduce people to those methods.
Well, I've often said that my addiction was mine and my recovery is mine.
Right.
And so, what I'm doing works for me. And I get people on Facebook and emailing me, hey, what are you doing? And I always, say, hey, listen, this is what I'm doing. And this works for me. I'm not saying it's going to work for
right.
you. You've got to find your own recipe and see what works for you. And there is a lot of options out there. And that's what this podcast is all about, is letting people know that there are myriad options out there. And you can, and you just need to research it.
One of the things that the two of you are both doing is giving back. And I think regardless of your methodology of getting sober and staying sober, is finding a way to give back and be productive and selfless in that field that you're working in. And I think that's very important.
One of the things that I've gained with sobriety is I care a lot more about other people. I mean, in my opinion, at least in my addiction, it's a very selfish thing that you do because you're thinking of yourself all the time. You're thinking, where am I going to find the next beer or the next drug to make me feel good or to make me forget? And now that I don't have that monkey on my back, I care more about other people. I've become a much more peaceful, gentle, caring person, and it is enjoyable to give back because I'm not worried all the time about just taking care of my feelings.
And we appreciate you giving back. And Randall, we want to say from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for stopping by today, sharing your story. If people want to follow more about you and your story, is there anywhere they can go?
Yeah, there's, I'm trying to think. BYU did a 3.5-minute piece on me that they posted. I can't remember what the feature's called, that they were showing at a UN conference, and it was just me talking. It was only 3.5 minutes. It was well done. It got like over 20,000 views on Facebook. If you just go to Odyssey House Utah Facebook page, you sort of see the stuff that the news stories that I'm getting out there, or just call me at Odyssey House. I mean, the nice thing about working in a nonprofit, there's no time deadline aspect like there was in TV. It's not like, hey, you got to be there you got to be ready to go at whenever. And I have time to talk to people now, and I have time to do something like this podcast. And it's just so if you just call me at Odyssey House.
And that's what this podcast is all about, is starting a conversation. Thank you very much for listening to Project Recovery. I am Casey Scott. That is Dr. Matt Woolley. Behind the keyboard over there is John. He's not Board Smith. And Randall Carlisle. Project Recovery is a KSL podcast. If you like it, please like it and subscribe.